We are again for another episode of My Baby Experts. I'm your host, Shari Criso, and let's move on to our topic and to our special guest. Tonight, we have back one of our favorite guest experts, and that is Dr. Susan Markel. And Dr. Susan is a pediatrician, and she is an author of one of my favorite, most amazing books out there on parenting. It's called What Your Pediatrician Doesn't Know Can Hurt Your Child. How many of you have read this book? I know there's a bunch of you. Yes, a bunch of you have read this book, and it is just awesome. Yes, it's a wonderful, wonderful book that just, has so many amazing chapters in it that breaks it down in a way that people can really, really understand. Everybody's commenting on how much they love the book. Dr. Susan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, and I'm very appreciative of all of these wonderful parents.
Oh, do you see them all? They're giving you lots of love here in the chat room.
I know. So many said that they've already read the book or that
yes.
Gotten it or starting it or they love it, so it's just wonderful.
Yeah, it is such a wonderful book, and what a contribution that you've made in writing it.
Well, I've been swimming against the tide as a pediatrician for so many years, and this is the payoff, and it's been worth it.
Yeah, I'm sure. It must feel wonderful. And, we just love having you here on the show. And we were talking before the show earlier, and I said, with you, it's just like, what's the topic? Just open up the book and pick a chapter, because any one of them is just so great and so wonderful and so needed. And basically that's what we did this week is, we kind of ran through the book and said which chapter this week, and when we threw it out there to everyone, which the topic was milk, the idea of cow's milk and milk in general, how it's really not meant for human consumption. And when I read even the title of the chapter, I said, people really need to hear about this. And we read more, and we talked to each other, and it was just like, wow, this is something that needs to be brought out a little bit more. Lots and lots of questions, I think, tonight about this.
I agree.
Yeah, awesome. So let's get started, because there's so much to talk about, and I think I want to get to as many questions as possible tonight. First, what is it about cow's milk, and what made you put that chapter in the book? How do we ever get to the place as a species where we are drinking milk way into adulthood and beyond?
I don't know. It's actually pretty strange when you think about it, because the whole idea of humans drinking milk from another species should actually sound very strange. It doesn't, because we've been so indoctrinated. But actually, the editor of my book, she put something in that it was one of the few things that I myself didn't write, but I think she said something like, would you consider giving your child dog's milk, or she used some other species, and they all sounded so strange. Would you consider giving your child whatever, cat's milk or squirrel milk or something?
Right.
And it really made it very clear that this is a very odd thing that we're doing. We're taking milk, which is a very, very wonderful, specific food for the health of baby cows, and we've taken it as a human manna from heaven, as the American Dairy Association has kind of influenced the American public to think that the healthy growth of their children depends on drinking milk, and it's just not true at all.
Yes, absolutely. It is interesting, and I say it in my DVD, and when I was reading it in your chapter, I talk about the whole idea that as a species, we're the only species on Earth that would ever consider feeding our infants, our babies, the milk of another species, and then you say in the book that we're the only species on Earth that drinks milk beyond weaning.
That's right. So for both reasons, it's really odd, and it doesn't really make sense that we're drinking milk at all beyond infancy or beyond the age of weaning, and that we're drinking milk that was made for another species.
And isn't it? It's interesting too. I mean, most of the world, and people don't realize this, most of the world is not able to digest and drink milk. Isn't that true?
It's true, because our bodies were not designed to drink milk beyond the age of weaning, and so we lose the ability, we lose the enzyme in our intestines called lactase. That's the enzyme that digests the sugar in milk. It digests lactose, and usually around school-age children, 4, 5, 6 years old, children lose the ability to even digest milk, and therefore, when they get a lot of milk and dairy, they end up with specific gastrointestinal problems.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of babies can't tolerate it, even when you're drinking it. If you're breastfeeding, that protein does go through the breast milk. So it's not the lactose that goes through the sugar. I mean, breast milk is very, very high in lactose. I think we were talking about it earlier that it's almost impossible. We really don't see babies that are lactose intolerant. It is the protein that's inside the milk, and so drinking lactate is not going to help.
That's right. I mean, I've heard mothers say, my baby is allergic to my milk, but of course that's not the case. The baby is allergic to something that the mother is ingesting, and usually it is cow's milk and dairy.
Yes. Somebody's saying in the chat room, lactose tolerant is the minority, not lactose intolerant. And that is true, that it is more of a recessive gene that you can actually tolerate milk beyond weaning.
That's right.
Yeah, most people don't know that.
And another thing is that cows don't drink milk.
Yes.
And we tell pregnant women to drink milk. We tell women who are breastfeeding, not you and I, Shari, but doctors tell pregnant women and breastfeeding women to drink milk because they need it for calcium. But the fact is that it's not a good source of calcium, which we can talk about later, but also because cows eat grass. Cows eat what you would consider green leafy vegetables, and that's the best source of calcium, not drinking milk.
Yes, absolutely. That's such a good point. There was I was holding back tonight. I saw this image. It was a cartoon that I saw on the internet that had a cow sitting there with a straw drinking milk from itself, and I thought, we're not going to go that far tonight. But it spoke to exactly what you just said, that a cow doesn't drink milk. No other mammal drinks. I thought we'd get some hate mail if I put that on there. But no other mammal on Earth drinks milk beyond weaning. So it is something of an oddity here that we don't really think about. We just kind of do. And
and I think the point is not so much that milk is horrible, which in many ways it is, but that it is not the be-all and the end-all. That is not a goal for parents to make sure that their children get enough milk and dairy so that their children will be healthy, because that is absolutely not the case.
Yes.
And the fact is that, we'll talk about this more, but milk and dairy products are not good sources of calcium, and that the whole idea that milk builds strong bones, that children, all of us adults have grown up with those kind of slogans that the American Dairy Association has put out. You need it for strong bones. The fact of the matter is that there is no correlation between drinking milk and eating dairy and strong bones, and that children who have strong bones, it's not correlated with milk and dairy, and that countries in the world where milk and dairy are consumed have the worst percentages of osteoporosis, for instance, Finland and England, whereas countries in the world where milk is not ingested, mostly Asian countries like Japan and China, where they don't have milk and dairy, they have the lowest incidence of osteoporosis.
Yes.
So the idea of strong bones is just not true.
Yes. No, and we've been indoctrinated into thinking that we need to drink our milk to have strong bones and teeth and get our calcium that way, and it is not really a good source of calcium at all.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Pretty interesting. Let's talk a little bit about, how, what the recommendations are and why they are that way. I mean, the American Academy of Pediatrics.
I don't know exactly why. I know that the American Dairy Association is a very powerful lobby, and also they have a lot of money, and that they spend tons of money on celebrities who are doing these got milk ads and who are doing commercials on television.
Yes.
And these celebrities, they really don't know any better. They don't understand what they're doing.
Yes.
If the Dairy Association offers them, like $1 million to open the refrigerator and take out milk and pour a glass of milk and say, delicious.
Yes.
I'm giving this to my children. Why not?
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that it's just not true.
Yes. So if it's not the best source of calcium is not from dairy, what would you suggest to, and then these were the questions that just poured in, just poured in this week after we announced what the topic was going to be. Everybody's wondering, my child's turning a year old, I'm not breastfeeding anymore, or I'm still breastfeeding and I want to give something else as well to drink. What would you suggest is the best source of calcium for infants and for children?
Well, as far as sources of calcium, parents are much better off giving their children non-animal sources of calcium, because the protein, the animal protein, actually leaches calcium from the bones. It has the opposite effect, and children who get a lot of milk and dairy, they actually end up with lower calcium levels than not. The best sources of calcium are vegetarian sources of calcium, which would be broccoli, green leafy vegetables, any kind of beans like chickpeas and tofu. Those are all very good sources of calcium.
Yes, great. And that's the problem, is that we tend to give too much of dairy, too much sugar, too much processed food, and we're not focused on having a healthy, balanced, nutritional diet of green leafy vegetables, fruits, and everything else that goes with it. This is really where we need to put our focus in our children's diet. And I think it starts with breastfeeding. I could see where, so many people come in and they talk about, I'm not eating any broccoli, I'm not eating this, that, because it's making my baby gassy. And my answer to that is broccoli doesn't, go from your mouth into your milk. It's not like your milk is making broccoli. That's not typically what causes gassiness or fussiness in infants. It's the cow's milk that's actually doing it, the protein that goes through your milk when you drink cow's milk or cheese or whatever it is that you're taking in, usually ice cream, that type of thing.
That's right. Pediatricians have known for a long time that colicky babies are often colicky because either they're having problems with if it's a cow's milk formula, or as very likely, as we said, it's because the mother who's breastfeeding, because she knows that it's the best food for her child, but it's negated to some extent because she's drinking a lot of cow's milk or eating dairy foods.
Right. Well, we were talking about, I wanted to just talk about what are some of the best ways that your child, I know that you had talked about, vitamin D, about, sun, what are some of the best ways for your child to get calcium?
Well, the issue is, if the issue is strong bones, which is really the issue here, that's what parents are thinking of when they're thinking of milk and dairy, because parents are always saying, well, what about my child's bone growth if I don't give milk and dairy? If the issue is strong bones, then the answer is not calcium. The answer is vitamin D, because we need vitamin D in order to absorb calcium. We don't really need that much calcium in our diet. And the way to get vitamin D, 100% the way to get vitamin D is through sunlight.
Yes.
And that if children are exposed to sunlight, which is just a natural part of being a child, being outdoors, then they will get the vitamin D, and they will be able to then manufacture their own. The sun converts a pre-vitamin D in their bodies into vitamin D, and then they'll be able to absorb the calcium that they get from the fruits that we're recommending, which is, again, the things like broccoli and green leafy vegetables and all kinds of beans and peas and split peas.
Yes.
And
so it's a healthy diet mixed with enough sunlight to create vitamin D in our bodies to help us absorb the calcium that we take in.
Right, and there's a third issue. The third issue, which is related, is exercise, because without a doubt, the strong bones, the bone health of your child is related to exercise, particularly weight-bearing exercise.
Yes.
And that multiple studies have shown, studies of children, studies of teenage boys, studies of teenage girls, and the Harvard nurses study, which had like 50,000 nurses, so adult women, they all show the exact same thing, that the bone health is related to exercise. The more exercise children get, the healthier their bones, and that their bone health is completely not related to the intake of calcium. There's no correlation, and in the Harvard nurses study, there was actually a negative correlation that the women who drank the most milk and ate the most dairy are the ones that ended up with the most bone fractures.
Wow, wow, amazing. It's like the opposite of what we've always learned and heard.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And then the whole idea of like with the sun, you know, especially in the summer right now, we're talking about sun exposure without sunscreen, correct?
Absolutely, because the sunscreen is, it's such a shame what the medical profession has done, you know, toward children's health, and this is one of them. Because what happens is that the medical profession, unfortunately, creates problems and then comes up with wacky ways to solve the problems that were created in the first place by the medical profession. And this is a typical example. Telling children or telling parents that the children should not go out in the sun, and if they do go out in the sun, that they have to be totally covered with sunscreen. So what happens is that the sunscreen blocks all of the UVB rays, which will convert the pre-vitamin D into vitamin D. So we have a generation of children now that are vitamin D deficient.
Mm-hmm.
So the medical profession has now declared that because we have this problem of vitamin D deficiency, that all children, including breastfed babies, must be supplemented with oral vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really too bad because for so many reasons, you can, first of all, you can overdose on vitamin D supplements, but you cannot overdose on vitamin D from the sun.
Yes.
The sun is a natural way to get vitamin D, but you know, there's another issue here. We're teaching children that there's a pill for everything.
Yes.
And then we wonder, why do these children grow up and frankly to be drug addicts? Because we've been giving them pills since they were practically born,
Mm-hmm.
because we're saying that nature is not good enough, so we need pills for every little problem, and this is one of them. Every issue is not a problem to be solved by giving a pill or giving a liquid supplement in this case,
Yes.
and yet that's what we're teaching our children. If we could just have children go out and play,
Yes.
like normal children, that's like a normal part of childhood. Go out, play, jump, run in the sun even for 10 minutes a day, 3 times a week. They would never need any calcium supplements or any vitamin D supplements.
Yes, yes. That's a good point, and I think the question's coming up, how long should this sun exposure be? And it doesn't need to be direct sunlight when we're talking about infants and babies, correct?
That's right, and in fact, babies can even be indoors through a window. They still get the rays that will convert to the vitamin D.
So it's about 10 minutes. Yeah. Would you say like maybe 10 minutes on their face and arms and neck?
Exactly, 10 minutes, approximately. Of course, it depends on different factors, like the time of day and the pigmentation in the person's skin.
Yes.
But in general, or the season. But in general, approximately 10 minutes, approximately 3 times a week, just on the face and the arms and the hands is enough vitamin D, and the vitamin D is stored in the tissues, so that in the summer months, children get vitamin D. It's actually stored and it's released in the winter months, so it doesn't have to be year-round. Nature works really beautifully that way.
Yes. That was what my pediatrician recommended when I was breastfeeding. He never recommended supplementing any vitamins, including vitamin D, especially in the summer months. We were outside, and he said, you know, it takes care of what you need even in the winter.
Very good.
Yeah. No, he's great. He's great. Yeah, and you know, there's so many people who come in talking about their pediatricians recommending multivitamins for their breastfed babies, which again we totally don't recommend either.
It's given the idea that nature is deficient, and so much of my book and so many chapters, no matter what the topic, it's explaining how so much medical interference is based on the idea that nature is insufficient, and that humans the medical profession somehow has to intervene. It starts at birth with the vitamin K. Babies are given vitamin K injections that they simply don't need. Babies are given eye prophylaxis, ointment in the eyes that they absolutely don't need. And it just goes on and on. That we're always trying to change things that nature has evolved to be perfect in the first place.
That's right. That's right. And we start them from a minute of age. We start putting antibiotics into them, shooting them with injections, vaccinations right on the first day.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, and then it's always about taking one more thing to fix whatever nature didn't do right.
That's right.
Yeah. We have everything we need, don't we? Just walk outside and there's the sun and our breasts and everything we need to have healthy babies.
I often would say to parents when I had my own private practice, live your life with your child as if you lived on a deserted island.
Yes.
But there's nothing artificial. There's no bottles. There's no nipples. There's no formula. There's no Tylenol or ibuprofen. Mm-hmm. There's no cough medicine. And you would be amazed at how much healthier your children would be without all these interventions.
Absolutely, absolutely. You were talking about the caveman diet, correct?
Right. I have in my nutrition chapter, which is actually the longest chapter in the book, I do talk a little bit about the Paleolithic diet, which would be the diet of humans approximately 10,000 years ago. It's also called the caveman diet. But what it's based on is, first of all, archaeological evidence shows that people who lived during those times, in many ways, were actually healthier.
Yes.
They didn't suffer from many of the industrialization type of diseases that we have now, like obesity, cardiovascular disease, arthritis, etc. And that probably the reason is because they ate food that was that humans were evolved to eat. That is, before we had any kind of industrialization or factories, humans could only eat food that could be found in nature and eaten raw, basically. And so food that could be foraged, food that could be hunted. And because of that, the humans in that era did not. There was no way that they could like catch a cow and milk a cow.
Right.
So there was no such thing as milk or dairy in the Paleolithic diet. And a lot of people actually are following the Paleolithic diet. It's not a vegetarian diet by any means because in those days, presumably people could either kill a chicken or come across a deer that that for whatever reason had died, and so it's not a vegetarian diet, but it's a diet that is actually more back to a natural way. And if you think about anything, I tell the children when I do practice the case in pediatrics that if it's found in nature, that's a whole food. That's a real food. If it's something that humans can eat without having to go through any kind of factory process or any kind of machine process, then that's a food that you can eat, as opposed to something that's found in a package,
yes,
like a carton of milk. And so I think that's certainly something to think about as one of the other one of the many reasons that cow's milk is simply not for humans.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dr. Susan, let's go back to our conversation. There's still so much I want to talk about. The question came up about, what are some of the signs that what are some of the negative things that we would see in our children when it comes to drinking milk? And we talked about allergies. What are some other things?
Well, as far as allergies, there are different manifestations of allergies because the children can have allergic rhinitis, where they have a lot of kind of runny nose, that congestion situation. They can have asthma or atopic dermatitis, also known as eczema. And in fact, many children who have the congestion, if the congestion is chronic, it gets into the ears, and they end up with ear infections. And so a major cause of ear infections is actually milk allergy. Yeah.
And it's so prevalent. I mean, the milk allergy, the ear infections. How many kids do you see with chronic ear infections and they're on antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic?
Well, that again is an entire chapter in the book.
Good. We're going to cover medications.
So it's a horrible situation because these ear infections are preventable, but instead of being prevented, they're being made worse because the treatment is worse than the disease. These children are put on antibiotics, and then they develop resistance to the antibiotics, so they get new ear infections, and then they end up with tubes in their ears.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of this could be prevented.
And eczema as well?
Yeah, eczema and is a very common result of milk allergy.
As well as reflux too. I mean, this is one that this just drives me crazy. The whole reflux conversation. How many children with reflux issues, and then they're put on medications for that?
I know. It's because the cow's milk is not digestible, and it comes up from the stomach into the esophagus, as opposed to infants who are breastfed. The breast milk is so digestible that it empties from the stomach right away. It goes down instead of coming up.
Yes, yes, yeah. It's just really it's a vicious cycle there, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some of the things, I mean, one of the things that did come up that I'm going to talk for a minute about was, and this came up on Earth Mama's website, Facebook the other day, was the question of organic milk versus raw cow's milk. First, let's take this apart. Let's talk about organic. I mean, it's beyond just the problems that we see with milk in general, are what's in the milk, the contaminants that are put into it.
Well, the contaminants that are put into milk are, first of all, they have the pesticides because the cows are eating grass, and the grass, unless it's from some kind of an organic situation, the cows are ingesting pesticides from the dirt and the grass and whatever else they're being fed. And then the cows are given bovine growth hormone.
Yes.
Because they're trying to create more, the cows to produce more milk. So they're given hormones. They're given cow hormones, which then get ingested by our human babies.
Yes.
And because the cows are given these hormones, they end up developing mastitis because their mammary glands are overproducing and they get infected, and so then the cows are put on antibiotics, and so there's tons of antibiotics in the milk that these children are drinking as well.
Yes. So at the very least, not only for your children, but for yourself, no one should be consuming dairy products that are not organic.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's like at the very least you should be doing organic. If there was one thing out there, and there's many, between the milk, the eggs, the meats, the vegetables, wherever you can, to do as much organic, fresh food as possible. But milk specifically is just loaded with all of this stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. And then the question kept coming up about raw milk, and this has been a question that, it brings up different schools of thought, and I think that this is where you need to be we need to think a little more open-mindedly. There's some really great resources I can send you to, but raw milk, it is illegal in many states to drink raw milk, and you have to kind of question where that's all coming about. But the whole idea of pasteurization that destroys a lot of the enzymes in the milk, that destroys a lot of the nutrients in the milk, that's part of the problem as well. So it's not just the milk, but it's what we do to the milk, from the contaminants to the pasteurization of it. So yes, raw milk, I believe from what I've been reading, is better than regular pasteurized milk. However, that you take the risk of, anything that could be contaminated in the milk if you don't know where you're getting it from. Dr. Marcola has some really great information, and that's a website I'd love to refer people to read more about, raw milk and understanding it a little bit better. And then you really need to look in your state, because it is illegal to drink it, unfortunately, in many, many states. California happens to be not illegal to drink raw milk.
I think PA, it's not.
Pennsylvania as well, not illegal, correct? But New Jersey. It's illegal in New Jersey. Well, everything's illegal in New Jersey, but we live in a pharmaceutical state, so unless it's made by a drug company, it's illegal here. You can count on it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the whole idea of what do we feed our children now that we know that this is the stuff that we... Oh, and one more thing is, when we look at the infant formulas, they're made with cow's milk, correct?
Correct. And sometimes it's not that intuitive. Children sometimes don't realize that when they're giving formula, because, the formula companies are very good at kind of disguising it and saying it smells like mother's milk, and it has all these natural ingredients, and they have pictures of breastfeeding women on the pamphlets that they give out.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, it's cow's milk.
Yes.
And for all the reasons that cow's milk is not a healthy food, it's certainly not a healthy food for human babies.
Yes. And you
One
know,
of the problems with cow's milk is that it's very high in protein because cows have to build, they get big very quickly, and it's very low in the essential fatty acids that babies need for brain growth. We always say that cows have big bodies and small brains, and this is really a food that's not really appropriate for humans.
Yes.
Certainly not for human babies.
People are asking about soy formula. Even worse, unfortunately, the soy formula. If you're using soy formula, you definitely want to take a look at the ingredient list on the can of soy formula. First ingredient is corn syrup, and then followed by soy, the genetically modified soy, and sugar. Has a lot of estrogenic effects. It has, what that means is it causes the body to produce estrogens in high levels. In fact, some studies show that babies that drink soy formula, it's like taking 5 birth control pills per day. So this is definitely something that you want to avoid is soy. Would you agree with that, Dr. Susan?
Absolutely. I talk quite a bit about in the chapter about breastfeeding how bad soy is, and also in the nutrition chapter. So I think people who read the book would, again, everything in moderation, but to consider soy as a healthful alternative is not really correct.
No, it really isn't a good alternative. Let's get to a couple questions because I know it's almost, can you believe the hour's gone by so quick? Let's talk about some of the things that they can drink, because as we're getting into summer, and we discussed this a little bit last week, if you have a baby that's less than 1 year of age and they're breastfed, they require no additional water at all. Breast milk has mostly water in it, and you don't want to give your infant less than a year old water even during the summer months. Your milk will adjust to become more watery and hydrate your baby adequately, correct?
Yeah, it's correct, because the fact that breast milk is about, 95% water. So what happens is if the babies are in a situation where they're hot, then they simply retain more of the water that's in the breast milk and urinate less. So it works out beautifully.
Yes, absolutely. And then once they hit a year, this is the big question that people want to know. If we're not going to cow's milk, what are we giving them to drink?
Right, and I've certainly water is a good alternative, and I know that I see going by that parents are saying that they're giving other kinds of you might call them milk. It's not cow's milk, but more vegetarian kind of milk, like coconut milk and rice milk and almond milk. I see that you have a very aware, alert, enlightened audience.
Don't I have a smart audience? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, let's talk about it, because they're not people who are watching the replays are not going to see the chat. And what's going on in the chat is they're talking about the alternatives to animal-based milk products like almond milk, like rice milk. Even coconut milk. And coconut, by the way, happens to be extremely healthy. It's got medium chain fatty acids in it. It's the only other substance on earth besides breast milk that contains these type of fatty acids and has gotten a really bad rap. Coconut milk is awesome. And I saw someone talking about they were eating coconut milk ice cream, and it's our tradition here at the My Baby Expert set that after we finish the show, we always finish with coconut milk ice cream. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. Extremely healthy for you. And my children are drinking almond milk with their cereal at this point. And rice milk.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And we know that, it doesn't have the calcium, but we all know from what we just learned that we don't need it from that way, that we can get it from broccoli and other vegetables. And from being out in the sun. I know my kids have been out in the sun a lot lately. They started camp yesterday. They're very excited about their camp. Running, doing,
and again, it's not getting calcium from cow's milk is not. It's not a good source of calcium. It's actually a negative source of calcium, which is it's really hard for parents to believe because it's so ingrained.
Yes.
That we need calcium, and the American Academy of Pediatrics is pushing milk and dairy constantly.
Yes.
So how are parents really to know that what they're being told is just not correct? They don't. It's not in the children's best interest to always listen to what the pediatricians are saying, unfortunately.
And that's coming from a pediatrician, right?
Well, that's why I'm allowed to say it.
And that's why I have you here saying it, Dr. Susan. Yeah. We need to hear it. That's what we need to hear. Let's answer a couple questions before we finish and give away the rest of the prizes for tonight. Let's see, who is this here? Okay, Katie Smith from Arizona. She says she wants to stop breastfeeding at 12 months. What should she give him instead? Do I give him toddler formula, juice, or milk? If it's milk, is it okay to give him Lactose milk? My husband and I both can't drink milk. I think we answered this question. First of all, juice is mostly all sugar. So if you're going to give juice to your child, the way that I would do it, first of all, never in a bottle. And second, I would water it down. Water is really the best drink that you can give to your child to hydrate them. You really don't need to give them a bunch of sugar in their food. Would you agree?
I agree, and it's in my nutrition chapter that juice is not a healthy food for children. No. I mean, it's okay to give it once in a while, but not to give it because parents think that they're giving something that's nutritionally helpful, because it really is basically sugar water.
Yep, absolutely. And then the other thing too is that kept coming up here is that, this is a great argument, or not an argument, but a great leeway into saying, what about some extended breastfeeding? Do we really need to stop at a year? I mean, yes, it is like the minimum recommendation, but that's only from the American Academy of Pediatrics. The World Health Organization recommends breastfeeding extended into 2 years at least. And wouldn't it be great for our children to be receiving breast milk into their second year?
I agree.
Yes. Okay.
I have some very nice photos of toddlers breastfeeding in the book.
Yeah, that's great. It's so great. It's just, again, it's like what we've been indoctrinated to think, and what's so ingrained in us to drink cow's milk, to not breastfeed beyond a year. All these things are just so a part of our society, using medications for every single thing that is wrong with us, and then creating things that are wrong with us so then we can medicate ourselves for it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and then let's see, some more questions here. It's like I'm going through all these questions and we've covered so many of them, I don't even know what else to answer here. One of the questions was Kelsey from Indiana, and she says, I personally don't like milk, nor do I drink it. I do, however, give my daughter 1 glass of milk in the morning. I think she would be okay without it. Should I just stop giving it to her, or is 1 glass a day still okay?
Are you asking me?
Well, I'm just wondering about moderation, because is our answer here that they shouldn't drink milk at all? If their children do drink some milk, should we substitute that milk? We're going to have a lot of people who are wondering, should we be not drinking it at all? And the answer from the conversation, I would say tonight, is yeah, you really don't need it.
You really don't need it, and you certainly don't need it with the attitude that this is a food that is going to be beneficial for your child's health.
Right.
I think that's really the issue, that if you want to give your child milk because your child loves milk, or you find that it's a good, for whatever reason, that your family, they like a little bit of milk, but to say that without the milk the child is not going to be healthy, that's simply not true. Can I just go off of what the American Academy of Pediatrics says about how bad milk is the first, up until the first year,
yes.
It never should be given?
Please, go ahead.
Because the American Academy of Pediatrics, as many of the listeners probably know, says that cow's milk should not be given before the first birthday, and that children should be on breast milk ideally, or formula, but not on regular cow's milk. And the reason that they have about 10 different reasons, which I'm going to go over very quickly, why babies should not get cow's milk. It hinders the absorption of iron, causing iron deficiency anemia. It is hard for babies to digest. It does not contain adequate nutrients for babies' health. It contains protein that causes allergies to human babies. It's deficient in vitamin E, which is crucial to healthy growth and development. It's deficient in essential fatty acids, EFAs, crucial to healthy growth and development. It contains protein levels that are too high for babies' growth and development. It contains sodium levels that are too high for babies' fragile system to handle. can cause kidney failure. It contains protein that is very difficult for an infant to digest and absorb. It can cause intestinal bleeding, leading to anemia from blood loss. Okay, so those are the things that babies should not have milk. You know, those are the reasons that babies should not have milk.
And that's all from the American Academy of Pediatrics giving the reasons why.
Given the reasons why babies should not have milk, and you should never give milk to an infant before the first birthday.
Correct.
So then I say a reasonable person who considers all of this evidence would find it difficult to believe that cow's milk is healthy for human babies on the day after their first birthday.
Right.
Why all of a sudden with this list that I just read would you want to give your baby, when the baby has been 1 year and 1 day, that they should be able to get this food? And the fact is that under scientific scrutiny, the myth of the healing powers of milk loses all credibility.
Yeah, I know. It's just unfortunate that, so much of this is not well known, and I'm seeing people in the chat and they're talking about, I wish I had known this, what do we do instead? It's very difficult. The most important thing here is to get educated and to try to make healthier choices moving forward. It's unfortunate. And reading Dr. Susan's book will give you a much better perspective on learning more on what you need to know. Knowledge, more power comes from more knowledge, right, Dr. Susan?
I agree, and people who read my book will see that it's not dogmatic.
No,
I never
not
say
at
you
all.
should or you shouldn't. I don't say you should or you shouldn't. I just educate and I give reasons why certain things are done so the parents can then be educated and make the choice whether or not they want to have these things done, whether they want these vaccines, whether they want these antibiotics, whether they want the vitamin K for the newborn, those kind of things that I mentioned earlier. By the way, I just want to say, apparently someone said that the book is not available on iPad. I really don't know. I have nothing to do with the marketing of the book.
Right.
I know it's on Nook, which is the Barnes & Noble electronic, and I know that it's on Kindle because it's selling very well on the Amazon Kindle. I don't know how to even find out if it's on the iPad, but maybe if someone wants to look into it or get in touch with Apple and ask them to put it on, I'm sure they'd be happy to do it.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, I think that, some of the questions that are coming up are moms who are feeding formula right now. There aren't that many other options when you're talking about a child that's less than 1 year of age. Unfortunately, there aren't that many great choices out there beyond the breast milk. You'll continue to do what you're doing, but it gives you some information to do once they hit a year. We don't need to continue with more cow's milk after that, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if I had to choose between a cow's milk based formula and a soy formula, then I would choose the cow over the soy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So I hope that answers the question there. Thank you for being with us tonight. We really, really appreciate it. We'll talk soon, and we'll pick out maybe we'll put it out to the audience to see what chapter they want to do next.
That's great. Okay, see you next time.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot.
Bye,
Good night.
Dr. Susan. Bye.
Good night.
Good night. So for everybody, from all of us here, Taylor, Joe, Lucky, good night for one more week, and I will see you all again next week. Again, remember, 8 o'clock next Tuesday night, 2-hour special. Good night, everybody. I love you all. Mwah. Good night.